Hey everyone, thanks for coming. I'm super happy to have this opportunity to talk to everyone. Thanks a lot to Link Time and the sponsors and everyone who put this together. Vitalik for that great talk, which I, agreed with everything, which is amazing. So, it's good to be at an Ethereum conference. So I'm gonna give a talk that I hope won't be too technical, but technical enough. So I'm going to first basically try to give you a nice little proof. Oh, okay. So I'm going to basically try to give a nice little proof, some kind of little bit of math for you to take away, and I'm going to talk about the roadmap for Casper, and then I'm going to do some kind of Q&A. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what correct by construction protocol design is, and then I'm going to kind of go through how I kind of achieve this for the binary consensus in this kind of consensus protocol. And then I'm going to kind of fill in the gaps and kind of show you the protocol. And then we'll look at this roadmap for the correct by construction research. All right, so let's get started. So firstly, what is correct by construction? First, I guess a little disclaimer: I'm not really an expert in correct by construction. This is really my first time ever doing correct by construction. But here's kind of my take. The normal way to kind of do, formal verification of this protocols is you formally specify the protocol. Then you give similarly formal language to some properties that you want that protocol to satisfy, and then you provide a proof that the protocol satisfies those properties. In the correct by construction approach, it's a little different in that we're not going to fully specify the protocol. We're only going to specify the protocol kind of part of the way, and then we're going to define the properties that we want, and then we kind of derive the rest of the protocol in order to kind of guarantee that the properties that we said we wanted are going to be satisfied by that protocol. So basically, the normal way works is that you have to completely specify the protocol, and then prove the safety or whatever properties that you want for your protocol. Whereas in the correct by construction way, we're gonna leave the protocol specification to kind of after the proofs are done. So the goal is basically that the result is going to be that we're gonna end up with really easy proofs of the correctness of our protocol, because we'll basically push the workout from the correctness proofs to the actual derivation of the protocol, just that satisfies those proofs. So, we're gonna really define and derive this protocol in a way that's guaranteed to satisfy the proofs that we set up for the properties that we need to have from our protocol. I'm gonna show you one of these proofs, and it's gonna be nice and short. It's probably gonna be the shortest consensus safety proof you've ever seen. But before we get into that, let's just talk about consensus protocols. So, just a little bit of background, hopefully. So there are two kind of properties that people usually think about for consensus protocols, at the very least: safety and liveness. So safety basically means that two clients, if they're following the protocol, will make consistent decisions. But decision, we really mean finalized commitment, and that they won't ever revert. So consensus protocols, traditionally speaking, only really do what are called in the blockchain space finalized decisions. So a consensus protocol is safe if two protocol following nodes make consistent decisions, and it's live if nodes eventually make decisions. And then basically we have some more definitions. So we have a couple more basic concepts in consensus. One of them is Byzantine fault tolerance. The idea is that your consensus protocol is Byzantine fault tolerant, and you can show that it's safe and live under some assumption about the number of nodes who are faulty. Namely, like you say, there's T nodes faulty, and then you try to show that your protocol has the safety and liveness properties under that assumption. And then asynchronous consensus kind of refers to this consensus protocols that don't rely on timing assumptions in terms of network latency, in order to like prove the particular like safety and liveness properties that we're talking about. So I put a question mark there beside the liveness because like there's the result called FLP impossibility that says that in an asynchronous network where you have faults, it's impossible to be both live and safe. And like using kind of deterministic protocol. So there's like a little question mark. And this talk is not going to be focused too much on liveness because that would be a little bit too technical. So we're really going to stay focused on safety. All right. So now that we talked a little bit about consensus, we're going to talk about getting to Casper. We're going to do this like partial specification, and then give some definitions, and then kind of complete the spec in order to get the consensus safety to fall out of it. So I'm going to define some data structures. We have validators. Validators have weights, and then we have these things called bets. And these are like all of the data structures that there are in this whole specification, this whole binary consensus protocol that I'm about to give you. So validators, some set of names, the weights, some numbers, right? And then bets are a triple. They have an estimate, which is like a value that the node is kind of guessing for what the value of the consensus will be. And then they have a sender and a justification. So the justification of a bet is a set of bets. And you know, it might be a little bit hard to wrap your head around in a second, but this graphical representation really helps everyone generally. So we can picture any set of bets using one of these DAGs, where basically we can align bets that have the same sender vertically, and we can use these arrows to kind of show which bets are included in the justification of which other bets. So in this case, the bet from the validator 3 in the bottom right is included in the justification of like the second bet from validators 1 and 2. And basically there's like this kind of graphical representation will be possible for any set of bets. And so like rather than like if you don't want to think about like this kind of more abstract data structure with like an estimate, a sender, and a justification, you can like try to picture these graphs. Great. So now we have a couple more definitions before we get into the fun stuff. So a bet is invalid if it doesn't have the max weight estimate in this justification, which basically means that so the justification again is a set of bets, and you can represent this as one of these graphs. And for every validator will have like a latest bet, and if there's more weight of the validators that are betting 0 than 1, then if you include those bets in your justification, your bet's invalid if your estimate is 1 instead of 0. So you really like the estimate of a bet has to be the max weight estimate in its justification, or else that bet is invalid. So we have this like bet structure, which is represented by this DAG, and we're going to like add this constraint if there's no Byzantine faults, that all the bets are valid. So not only do they have justification in the sender and an estimate, but the estimate is the max weight in the justification. Now there's this thing called equivocation, which is another kind of Byzantine fault, and Vitalik mentioned in his talk, where basically in this case, in terms of this data structure, it basically means having two bets from the same validator, neither of which are in the dependency of the other. Which is to say that like there's no path following the directed edges from one of the bets to the other. And this kind of is evidence of the breaking of the single-threadedness of a validator, and like corresponds exactly to like the definition that Vitalik gave us earlier. So in this binary consensus protocol that I'm going to give a safety proof for, we are not going to have any Byzantine faults. So all of the bets are going to be assumed to be valid, and we're going to have no equivocation. So a view in the non-Byzantine fault tolerant Casper is basically any set of bets without equivocations or invalid bets. Great. So we have these data structures. Let me take a little breather, because that was the tough part. That was the part you have to kind of push through. So again, there's like estimate, sender, and justification on every bet. This forms like this graph. in a non-Byzantine fault tolerance setting, we don't have any equivocation or invalid bets. A bet is invalid if its estimate is not the max weight estimate in its justification. Essentially, every bet is like showing like the result of an election given by the bets in its justification. And so now I'm going to define like a safety definition, which is where the kind of correct by construction stuff will kick off. So rather than to define, think about consensus safety directly, I'm going to define this thing called estimate safety. So an estimate is safe in a given view if all possible futures of that view have that same estimate as its max weight estimate. So what this means is basically there's no way for the view to be extended. There's like so a future of a view basically corresponds to adding bets to that view. So there's no way to add bets to the view in a way that changes the estimate or leads to a view that doesn't have the same estimate as the one that's safe. So an estimate is safe if in a particular view, if all futures of that view have that same estimate. And this definition of estimate safety is what we're going to use to give our correctness proof for the consensus safety. So basically, so again, estimate safety, let me just like repeat it over and over again. An estimate in a view is safe if all possible futures of that view have that estimate as a max weight estimate. So it's kind of a necessity criteria, like all possible future views have the same estimate. An estimate safety oracle is basically able to compute whether an estimate is safe given a view. So then I'm going to define a decision rule for a consensus protocol that basically says I'm going to decide on a value if and only if that value is safe in my view of the protocol, according to this estimate safety definition. So again, the decision rule, which is like the rule by which nodes make decisions in a consensus protocol, will be make a decision if and only if the value that we're deciding has estimate safety in the view that I've observed. And now basically what I'm going to do is give this safety proof that I talked about. And basically using this oracle, right? So like rather than say how to calculate whether something is safe, I just gonna like assume that I have this like function that just like returns magically the safety of an estimate. And so now I'm going to like prove this consensus safety rule. So basically we're going to suppose that all nodes that run the protocol only decide if they have estimate safety. And we're going to suppose that two nodes have decided. One of them has decided on estimate 1 in view U1, the other one has decided on estimate 2 in view U2. So these nodes have only made this decision because it's safe. So we know that E1 is safe in U1 and E2 is safe in U2. Then what we also know is that the union of U1 and U2 is a possible future of U1. So because basically the client who's seeing U2 could just pass all of the bets that they see to the client who's seeing U1, and that kind of will bring U1 to some new state of the protocol, some future state that they could observe after having observed U1. So and basically here, because we're not in a BFT setting, U1 and U2, the union of them is not going to contain any equivocations. There's a kind of an important aside, basically because in the Byzantine fault tolerance setting, we're going to have to check when we do this union for whether or not we've discovered more equivocations by observing the view of some other node. But the proof is very similar. So we know that the union of these two views from these two different clients is a possible future of U1, one of the client's views. And we know from the definition of safety that the estimate in that possible future must be the same as E1. We have very similarly, U1 union U2 is a possible future of U2 because like client 1 can send all of his bets to client 2, and then client 2 is moved into the new future state. And it follows from the safety of the estimate 2 in U2 that the estimate in the union of their views is E2. And that is, so basically what we have is that E1 is equal to the estimate in the union of their views, which is equal to E2. And that is the consensus safety proof done, right? Basically, kind of like magic. Really was 3 slides with very little text on it. And like that's kind of starts to show you the elegance of the correct by construction approach. But the thing is that we use the safety oracle, right? We just like had the safety oracle tell us whether an estimate is safe before a node decided on it. And so basically what we need to do is find an implementation for this oracle in order to complete the specification of the protocol in this correct by construction manner, where basically the protocol specified in this manner will satisfy and inherit the properties of safety that I get from this proof that I just shared. So so basically an ideal adversary is kind of this like proposal that I have for how to implement this safety the safety oracle. So an ideal adversary, what they will do is they will strategically search the state of possible protocol futures for one that violates the estimate of the safety calculation. So if I'm trying to do a safety calculation for a particular estimate in a particular view, I will simulate an ideal adversary on that view to try to find the future of that view that violates that estimate. So basically the ideal adversary will either return a possible future of view with a different estimate than is under attack, or it fails to return anything or throws an exception. So the idea here is that the ideal adversary will only return a value if it is not safe. And the ideal adversary will fail to return a value when the protocol is safe. Basically, what this really amounts to is a search of possible states of the possible future states of the protocol. But the ideal adversary doesn't need to search all of them, right? It's essentially a dynamic programming problem where the adversary needs to do as strategic and efficient a search as possible, kind of doing a greedy brute force search as opposed to looking at all possible future protocol states, because there's really an infinite number of them. So here's our kind of strategy. Here's the first kind of shot that we kind of have about how this ideal adversary should work. The ideal adversary, assuming that they're trying to attack the estimate 0, will search possible futures of the current view by trying to get validators to create latest bets with estimate 1 and showing these latest bets to validators who have latest estimate 0, and kind of repeating this process until either the attack succeeds and the canonical estimate of the overall view has changed from 0 to 1, or until the attacker no longer makes any progress. That's kind of what we would like to do. Kind of makes sense. The idea is the worst thing that should be able to happen for a particular estimate is for only the competing estimate to possibly be created and propagated. But there's kind of a little catch here, which is that when you show a bet from a validator to another, there are side effects, which are basically all of the fact that you are showing all of the bets in its justification, and those bets' justifications. And basically we kind of find that the ideal adversary would be a lot easier to compute if there weren't these side effects, because it could do a kind of greedier search, deciding on a case-by-case basis whether to show a bet and a justification to a particular validator. So basically, what we're gonna try to do there is find a lower bound on safety. So a lower bound on safety is an interesting thing, basically because instead of trying to implement the safety oracle, what we can do is try to implement a lower bound on the safety oracle, i.e. an oracle that says it's safe when it's safe. When it says it's safe, we're definitely safe. But when the lower bound oracle says we're not safe, we may actually be safe. And so the kind of lower bound oracle will imply the actual safety oracle, and so we're going to be able to inherit the safety proof if we have a lower bound on the safety oracle. So rather than needing to find precise safety oracle, we can just find a lower bound, i.e. just some constraint that implies the safety property. So here's basically the crazy idea that is going to be this like solution that I found to like complete the specification and to satisfy the safety property for the consensus. Basically, it says that the ideal